Hello there, welcome back. Good to see you back again. So, in this session, we'll be focusing on arrays in PHP. So, we look at indexed arrays, multi-dimensional indexed arrays, and then we'll move forward to associative arrays and multi-dimensional associative arrays. We'll be taking up some small exercises to understand the concept on arrays. So, I'm going to use VS Code to code my PHP files, and then I've already installed XAMPP, and I'm going to use the Apache web server for executing my PHP code. If you're not clear with how to install these servers or how to use VS Code for writing PHP files, please refer to my previous video lecture on the installation part. So now let's straight away start with the demonstration. So this session is all about arrays in PHP. So we'll start off with an indexed array in PHP. So what is an indexed array? How you declare that? So let me give the name for the array. That's the name, and you have to declare it using the keyword array. And you can have the data items inside the array. It's a single dimensional array, so we'll have the data items. Let me give my name Satish, and some names we'll have in the array. Ram, we'll have Matthew, we'll have Tom. So that's how you declare an array. So this array contains strings. An array can contain a mix of all the elements too, like float, integer, strings. That's possible in PHP. But here we'll be taking up an array of strings like this. The next thing is how to print the items from within the array. I told you it's an indexed array, so the index starts from 0. So this is at index 0, this is at index 1, this is at index 2, and so on. So you can very well use the index for printing the value. So let me show you how to perform that. You use the name for the array and then you give the index. So what will be the output here? Satish will be the output because Satish exists. The value exists in index 0. So let's run the output. So you see, we have printed the element using the index. So that's why it's an indexed array. Say the index starts from 0, and you can use the index for accessing the items inside the array. If I want to traverse through the entire array and print it using a for loop, how to go with that? You can go with for $i equals 0 and $i less than. You need the count of elements within the array. So you have to give count, and then you have to pass the array name $vit. So that gives the count. So the count here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 elements. Since the index starts from 0, we are running it from I less than 4. So it will be 0, 1, 2, 3. That's the meaning of this specific check. Very simple check. We have done that in many other languages. And we have to increment the value of $i plus plus. Now we'll echo all the values. It's echo $vit. And then we have to give $i. Don't forget to give the dollar when you're using the variable I. So now let's print the value. So it's going to go from 0 till index 3, and then it's going to print all the values. Let's take a look at the output here. So Satish, Ram, Matthew, and Tom. So we have used a simple for loop to traverse through the entire array and print all the elements. Now we can see how we can use a for each loop. How to use a for each loop to again print all the elements from within the array. So the keyword here is for each, and then first you have to give the array name $vit as $value. So you can give any variable name here. We'll see what is the purpose of this variable soon. Echo $value. So what's happening here is from this array, every item is taken. It is mapped to value. So first item Satish will be mapped to value, and then value will be printed. So what will be printed? Satish will be printed. Next, Ram will be taken from this array. It will be mapped to value, and Ram will be printed. Like that, this loop is going to iterate for every element inside the array. Let's take a look at the output. We're going to get the same output like what we did with a simple for loop. So you can with a for each loop if you're not willing to give all the conditions like I less than, I plus plus, and things like that. So that's the use of an indexed array. So you can use the index to print the data items from within the array. I hope you were able to follow this. Now let's take a look at multi-dimensional indexed arrays. So what is a multi-dimensional? We look at two-dimensional arrays which has rows and columns. So we look at multi-dimensional indexed arrays in PHP. How to go with that? So for this, we'll be taking up a set of rows and columns, and then we'll create an array to hold the data, and we'll traverse the entire array and print the data out. So what is that we are planning to store? Let me just give an idea about the data we are going to have. So we'll have registration number, name, and phone numbers of students. And we need to store, say I'll give some sample data here, registration number to be 12BC1, name is Satish, and some phone number, let me enter some dummy number. Likewise 12BC002, we'll have Ram, and let's enter some dummy number here, 7, something like that. And one more row, 12BC003, we'll have Matthew, and we'll enter some number. So we should create an array, an indexed array, and multi-dimensional indexed array that can store this data. So how to proceed with this? We'll create the array. So it's, again, let's give the array name to be $VIT, and it's an array, okay, but it's an array holding many single dimensional arrays. So each row, so here every row is a single dimensional array. So we need to declare an array for every row. It's like within this you again declare an array, and then you populate the data item. Since it's a string, I'll just give that in quotes, 12BC1, name is Satish, and phone number, let's have the phone number to be some numeric value, something like this. And you have to give a comma. Now you have to declare another array, and then you should pass the values for the second row. So what are the values for the second row? It is 12BC002, and you have Ram, and let's enter some phone number here. The second row is done. Now let's go to the third row, give a comma, go to the third row array, and let's enter the data here. That is 12BC003. We'll have Matthew. So you separate the data items with a comma, and then you enter some phone numbers. Now we have declared all the three rows. It's done. No need to give a comma here, and we have already closed the array. So this is how you declare a multi-dimensional indexed array. The next question comes, how to traverse this entire array and print the data items out. So for this, let's take a look at the use of a for loop. Using a simple for loop, nested for loop, we'll say, to print the data items. Let's code this simple for loop. So we'll run an outer for loop for the number of rows. So it's for $row. I'll call this $row. We'll start from row 0, and $row less than, how to find the number of rows? It's count of $VIT. So count of array name gives us number of rows. So here it will be 3. So we are going to run from row number 0 to row number 2. So that's why we're given $row less than count of $VIT. Very simple for loop, like what we have done in any other programming language. And we have to increment the variable row by 1, $row plus plus. So we are traversing through every row, and then we have to find the number of elements in every row. So first loop is for number of rows. The second loop is for number of elements in every row. So we'll say, let's say $col is equal to 0. That's the variable I'm using for the number of elements in every row. And $column less than, how we find the number of elements in every row? It is count of array name, and then we have to pass the row index. Say count of $VIT. If row is 0, it returns the number of elements in row 0. Then when row goes to 1, count of $VIT, 1 will return number of elements in row 1. So like that, we'll find number of elements in every row. Next, we have to increment the variable col. So it's col plus plus. Now we'll print every element using the index. So it's echo array name. We'll give the row index and then the column index. Very simple. So that's how you traverse through a multi-dimensional indexed array. Use the indices for printing the data out. Let's take a look at the output. So this is the output. We have achieved the output here. Maybe after printing every row, we can echo a break tag so that every row is printed in a new line. Now let's take a look at the output. Let's see what's the output. So we have received our output here. This is row 0, row 1 and row 2. So we have traversed through an multi-dimensional indexed array and we have printed the output. Hope you're clear with this. Now let's see how to use a for each loop for printing the data items within a multi-dimensional indexed array. Now let us use a simple for each loop for printing the data items from within the array. So now we'll see a demo on using a for each loop for printing the data items. So the keyword is for each. The array from where we are going to take the elements is $VIT as $row. So the syntax is fetch every row from this array. So what this row represents here is an entire single dimensional array. So we are taking every row at a time. So first we are taking this row, and then what we are going to do with this row is we are going to take all the elements from that row. So you're going to have a nested for each loop here. For each, so from this row you take all the values, say $value, echo $value. So after printing each row, we can echo a break. So an HTML break tag so that every row gets printed in a new line. So what is that we have done here? Take every row from this array. So it's going to take a row at a time from this array. And from that row, take every value. So you're going to take a row, and from this row, we're going to take every value and print it here. After that, we'll go to the next row. And then from that row, we'll take every value and print it to the output. So this is how you use a for each loop. Let's take a look at the output. So you're going to get the same output here. So you can either use a for each loop or a simple for loop. When you're using a simple for loop, you have to go with all those conditions, I less than count of VIT, $I plus plus, something like that. But here it sounds more simple, like no need to go with the conditions. Just give for each $VIT as $row, for each $row as $value, echo the value. Your results are out on the screen. I hope you are now clear with the concepts on multidimensional indexed arrays. Now let's take a look at the next concept, that is associative arrays in PHP. Now let's move ahead and let's take a look at the next concept. What is that concept? Associative arrays in PHP. Let me delete all these things. So we are starting off with a new concept, that is associative arrays in PHP. What is an associative array? An associative array can hold key value pairs. For instance, 12BC001 is the registration number, and this is mapped to a name, say Satish is the one who is having this registration number. So the registration number is the key. It should be unique, and this is the value. Values can be duplicates. So when you're going to store such key value pair, say 12BC002, we can give this in quotes, since registration number is again a string here. So we can just give that in quotes. Say 12BC002 is a registration number for some other students. Let's say it's for Ram. So again, you have a key value pair, comma. Let's take one more example, 12BC003, 12BCE003, and this is for Matthew. So you have key value pairs in your array. So you have an array and it contains key value pairs. So let's declare this array. Let's call this array to be $VIT. And how you declare an array? As usual, you give array and then you enclose that within parentheses. So now you have finished declaring an associative array in PHP. So this is an associative array. So what is the difference from an indexed array? It holds key value pairs. Now, how to print the data items from within an associative array? We need to use a for each loop. For each is the syntax from which array we are taking this values out from $VIT. As now, when you are retrieving, what you are going to retrieve is you're going to retrieve key and value together. So how will you retrieve that? Is say $key and then $value. So you're going to retrieve BCE1, that will be $key, and Satish $value. After retrieving that, what we can do is we can echo $key dot $value. So this is how it works. First it takes this key value pair, maps it to $key and value, we'll print key and value. Next it takes this key value pair, maps it to key and value, and then we'll echo key and value. Finally it takes BC3 and Matthew and maps it to key and value, and we'll echo key and value. Let's now take a look at the output. So here you have the output, key value, and key value. So now you understood the difference between an indexed array and an associative array, and how to use a for each loop to print the data items from within an associative array. I hope you are able to follow this. Now let's move on to multidimensional associative arrays. What do you mean by multidimensional associative arrays? A multidimensional associative array is an array that holds several rows of such data that we are seeing here. That's it. So this is just one single dimension. If your array is going to hold several rows of such data, then it's called an multidimensional array. So let's see how to declare that. Say this is one row of data. So like that, we should have several rows of data in our multidimensional array. So our array holds many arrays, single dimensional arrays within it that contains data like this. So let me replicate the rows here. Say I have 3 rows of data, and each row is an array in turn. So I'll declare an array, and this is the first row, close the parenthesis, comma. Likewise, this is the second row, comma. This is the final row. And for every array, we should declare it as an array, right? So we give the keyword array, and then we open parenthesis, and then finally we have closed the parenthesis, and this is the end of our multidimensional associative array declaration. So what is a multidimensional associative array? It's nothing but an array containing many single dimensional associative arrays. Say why we need different rows. Maybe I'll say this is BCI students, maybe another branch students take up another row. This is BCI, this is BKT. So for each branch we have a separate row. Let's take it that way. So it's BKT, and name, maybe we call this Ratish and Matish, something like that. And here it's Tom and Tim. Some dummy data we are just populating here, Matthew, and here it can be Chris and Jeff. So let's make it meaningful. That is, for every row, it corresponds to a specific program. Say this is for computer science, this is for information security, and this is for blockchain. So we have 3 rows of associative arrays that makes up a multi-dimensional associative array. Now the question comes, how to print all these data out, how to use a for each loop and print all the data out. So we need to use a nested for each loop here. I'll tell you how to perform that. So in the outer for each, say for each, from which array we are taking it, $VAT as $row. So we are going to take every row from the array. What it means, $row represents every row. So we're going to take a row, an array of associative. So $row represents a single row here. So we're going to retrieve an single dimensional associative array, map it to row. And when you have a single dimensional associative array, we can access that row and retrieve every key and value, like what we have done earlier with single dimensional arrays, $value. And we have to echo the key and value, $key dot $value. So what's happening here is we are taking every row. So this row comes first, and we are taking that row, and from that row we are accessing every key and value. So $key will be 12BCE1, $value will be Satish. Next $key will be 12BCE2, $value will be Ram. Next will be 12BCE3 and Matthew. Once when that is done, again it will go to the next row and it will start fetching the key and value. Maybe after printing every row, we'll have a break tag here so that every row gets printed in a new line. Now let's take a look at the output. We have received our output. So this is for BCE, we have the students, and BCI and BKT. So we can use a very simple for each loop and traverse through an multidimensional array. Let's take an exercise here. Let's find the number of students whose name start with MA from all the branches. We just need to count the number of students whose names start with MA from all the branches. How we can perform that? So what is that we are going to do here is we are going to take every value, find the substring. We are going to take the first two characters in value. So if we'll perform a string compare, and then we'll perform this substring operation to extract the first two characters. So it's the string handling method substring, from which string value starting position is 0, two characters we are extracting. If this value that we are extracting matches this string and the result is 0, that's the meaning. See, when you're using string compare, the substring that we are extracting matches with the string. How you come to that conclusion? When it returns a 0, maybe we'll have a $count for the number of students with a name starting with MA, and we'll also have a boolean flag false. We'll set the boolean to false. If we find a student with the name starting with MA, we will say we'll increment the count $count plus plus, and we'll also set the boolean $found is equal to true. So let's not echo a break tag, that's from a previous exercise. Now, if not a found, that is if found was never set, what we can say is echo no such students in the university. If found was set, that comes under the else part, we can echo the total number of students with the names starting as MA is, we can just give dot and $count out. I think it's with their names starting as MA. I think, yeah, there can be some grammar errors here. Let's ignore that for now. Let's just see whether we are getting the output. Let's run this code. Yeah, the total number of students with the name starting as MA is 2. So how many students we have here? This is one student and this is one student. We have completed this simple exercise using a multidimensional associative array. I hope you were able to follow all the concepts we have discussed on arrays, indexed arrays, multidimensional indexed arrays, associative arrays, and multidimensional associative arrays. With that, we are coming to an end of this session. If you have any questions, you please leave your comments below. And thank you all for listening. Take care.